Hello, and welcome back to the 5 Elements podcast. Thank you once again for joining. Today, I got an old friend on. Her name is Katie Bunton. I knew her as Katie Hillier because we go a little bit farther back, but now she'll be known as Katie Bunton. She is, I guess, a twin influencer mom. Her and I actually were colleagues at Equinox as personal trainers in Toronto, and that's how we met. So we talk about her journey going from studying massage therapy to becoming a personal trainer, meeting her now husband, moving to Australia, and becoming a twin influencer mom. She has quite a big following, and she documented her postpartum journey through fitness the whole time. And that's why I reached out originally. It was good to catch up, old buddy, but also it was good to talk about her experience of going through postpartum with her training, because she's continued to train after that, and she's remained a healthy life, even though her content isn't fitness related. I would say sometimes it's fitness adjacent, and we talked about that a little bit. So that's going to be today's episode. You can follow her on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'll put all the show links, the show notes in the links below for this episode. You can find her there. But we are going to be getting right to it today because Katie and I recorded for like 2 hours. So I do not want to add any more time onto this episode with our typical Rose and Thorn segment or the classic fake ad that I've been running. So we're not going to get any witty banter today. We'll save that for the actual episode with Kate. If you are looking for online coaching or help with your fitness goals, you can apply for online coaching with me. My online coaching program entails customized nutrition coaching and training where you would actually receive your full specific customized program in an app that I use. You'll be getting weekly feedback and check-ins with that and a monthly coaching call as well. Now, if your only care is weight loss, you don't care about anything else, I'm probably not your guy. But if you are looking to improve your nutritional habits, your relationship with fitness and the gym, get strong as hell, improve your confidence, and improve your body composition, I can help work with you there. I have a more collaborative approach. I'm not just going to tell you what to do. I'm going to offer a lot of my expert guidance, but I'll also be working with you because one of the things I care the most about is making sure that you can sustain whatever habits you adopt with me indefinitely, so that's not just you adding more repetitions to the cycling of yo-yo dieting and training. If that sounds like something you're interested in, I will leave a link in the show notes where you can apply for online coaching, and we can set up a complimentary call, see if we're the right fit, and go from there. With that out of the way, let's get today's episode with Katie Bunton. We're going to be talking about her journey from RMT to PT to twin influencer mom out in Australia, but also her journey through postpartum fitness for herself and lessons she learned along the way. So I'll see you on the other side, and I hope you enjoyed this interview. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me all the way across the world.
Yeah, back in your hometown of Toronto. I guess Ontario would be your hometown, and now you're down under in Australia.
Yeah, one of my origin places, Toronto. What a formative place that city is.
Do you miss the pizza at King Taps yet, or what?
Okay, if I had to choose one thing I miss, it's the Stinging Bee, baby. Shout out to that pizza, because that's life changing. I will come back just for that pizza.
What's Stinging Bee? I've never even been.
The Stinging Bee. You haven't had the Stinging Bee from King Taps.
I've never been to King Taps. I've never
been there.
I know
because that's why you fit, Dylan.
I only know about it because of you. Because when you worked at Equinox, you always talked about it, and everyone would talk about it. So I know about it deeply. I've still never been.
Okay, when people say, all these restaurants will say, oh, we have a world-renowned this, a famous this, a bit. No, this is the only place I know that actually has a famous food item for a good reason. And if you're ever in Toronto, you need to go to King Taps and eat this pizza. It's literally mind-blowing. So good.
Been here for 10 years and literally worked beside the place that she's talking about, and I've told people to go, actually.
Do it.
I was like, you should go to King Taps if you're in town.
Do you want a referral fee?
Yeah. I get a little discount code. Like hashtag Bun Twins, and I'll get a couple bucks off a slice of pizza.
Oh my God, they should sponsor me for saying that.
Okay, so let's get a little bit, because obviously we know each other, but my audience might not know who you are, and we used to actually work together at Equinox. Mm-hmm. But kind of tell us who you are, what you do, and who you create content for, because you're mostly doing content creation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess it's funny. A lot of my, audience that follows me across my channels, they do not have any clue what I did before this. And that's because I don't really talk about it. But I guess my history work-wise before I was content creating is I actually was a personal trainer. That's how Dylan and I actually met, because he was a very senior trainer at a gym that I was basically like learning the ropes at. And, you know, you were like a good mentor. And that's actually how we met when I first started personal training. But before that, I
Yeah, I was
actually
your
went to
mentor,
school
correct?
for.
At Equinox?
No, actually, Lorenz was my mentor, but I
Okay,
feel
yeah.
like you just kind of like, I don't know, we've got a good, like, we had a good vibe. So we just ended up chatting a lot about stuff.
Yeah.
And I just, picked your brain about everything. But anyway, yeah, before I was a personal trainer, I studied massage therapy for 3 years. And so I already had like a really extensive, like, knowledge about the body, like, theoretically. And I was like super interested in the theory part of that job, but I was not interested in actually touching people ever. Like, I really struggled with that. That's
Wait, you
awful to
went
say.
through RMT and then you didn't even want to touch anyone by the end of it.
No, I never actually like set up a practice. So like even halfway through the program, like I was literally tutoring my friends. Like that's how I was so into the theory of like physiology and anatomy. I was so into it. But then it would come to like clinic where you'd actually have to like touch people and like be in that like intimate setting with like strangers and stuff. And I like genuinely really struggled with it. Like I found it so uncomfortable, and I thought I would just get used to it and I would just get over it. But I don't know. I would have like visceral responses. Like I just did not cope well with it. So like halfway through the program, my teachers and my mentors were like, look, like maybe you should like get into teaching because like you're really great at the theory side, but like I don't think you really enjoy this. And I was like, no, it's going to come to me. It's going to come. And I stuck it out because I loved the theory so much. And then as soon as I finished, I was like, I'm going into personal training because I was obsessed with like learning about the human body. And then, but I didn't actually want to I didn't want to touch anybody's body. I just wanted to help them work out.
I didn't know that was
That's
the beef
literally
that you
how
had
it
with
happened.
it.
Yeah, for real. And I don't like to admit it because I feel like people will like judge me for that. I don't know how to explain to you guys, but it's really not a job that everybody can do. It's like, it is
100%.
very intimate. It is very uncomfortable at times. Like I had a lot of like super uncomfortable, inappropriate, like creepy men. Like I just remember being like, I'm not trying to do this every day. Like I don't want to be on this playing field. I felt like I didn't get taken seriously, like as some people might have been taken. Like it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. But anyway, that's how I became a personal trainer.
I'm really surprised
I
that there
was
was
like,
creepy men that wanted young, attractive massage therapists. I'm really surprised by
yeah,
that,
exactly.
actually.
And people warned me that was going to happen. And I was like, oh, come on,
Yeah.
And no. And then I also thought I could handle that type of thing, but I just didn't know. It's different. It's different. Like, again, I was a bartender. I was already very like,
I was going to say.
I dealt with creepy men a lot in my young adulthood, but there's a different, like you have armor, like when you're behind a bar and like you've got people around and stuff there. It's like a different thing when you're getting those kind of interactions, when you're like behind a closed door, this person has very little clothing on. Like it was like very different for me. And it was not for me. So, but it's an amazing, amazing career. And it's so important and helpful for people. And so like, and I honestly didn't think that I was doing it justice. So, but like it is should be very highly respected profession, by the way. And that's what's so upsetting about it.
Well, I mean, I don't think people would be judgmental to you because that's very vulnerable to admit that you went through that much work on something and you enjoyed it. And then there was a specific, because at the end of the day, there are people who they may have not had other options, or they just kind of stuck it out, but then they half-assed the career the whole time and didn't give the best service that they could. And that's a worse position to be in for both parties. So, I mean, you didn't do a 180 pivot either. You did like a 45-degree pivot where personal training was.
No, I literally left school and I was like, never doing that again. I honestly wanted to, funny story too, I actually wanted to go in to be a physiotherapist because like a lot of this stuff was like very, very much in line, and you could actually use that 3 years to get into a university, but then it would have been another 3 years of school. And when you get out of college and you're like, I am so sick of being broke. Like, I can't go back to school right now. Like, I'm not trying to go back into university. And then the other thing was, and funnily enough, the other thing was I wanted to be a mom. And I was like, okay, so I already went to school late. I'm 22, turning 23. If I go back into university right now and it's minimum 3 years, and then if I want to specialize, it's more. And then I'm putting myself in even more debt and years of my life gone. I literally wanted to be a mom by the age of 25, like originally. Like I was like, wow, that's not really working with my plan to become a mom. Like I was like, that's literally the reason I didn't go in for physiotherapy. And so then the next pivot was training, because I was like, oh, well, this is perfect. It's still in the same, like I'm still utilizing everything I learned. I'm passionate about it. And it's also a job that like I can have my own business, like a massage therapist, and like I can work as much as I want, and it can work around me being a mom first. That's literally like my train of thought, which is so funny because obviously it didn't play out like that. I didn't have kids for many years later, but I thought that at the time.
So when you started training, you actually thought of training as being a potential career for you?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I did. I thought it would have been great. Look, I didn't foresee a lot of I think a huge issue was I had major culture shock from making so much money in the service industry, and then having to like go back down to like a minimum wage to start was really tough. And living in Toronto, like that's not a fun position to be in. Like if you're making minimum wage living downtown, you're not living downtown anymore because you can't afford it. It's literally impossible. So I was juggling both jobs to try to like afford to stay. And it was honestly like, it was really hard. Like it was almost impossible. And then I ended up meeting Harriet and I ran away to Australia, and I still trained. I worked as a trainer in Australia as well.
You were at F45 there, weren't you? Or an F45 type?
Similar, but
similar. Okay.
In my opinion, much better and more comprehensive than F45. I have like
the look you just gave is so awesome.
Sorry. I literally have like a vendetta against F45. I like think that I don't know. I've been telling women and people, whoever will listen to me, stop wasting your fucking money on that. Like that is literally not helping you. Like sorry. I get so annoyed about these F45 programs. Anyways, the gym I worked at was really cool, actually. It was a startup. Cut that part out.
I won't mention F45
I'm going to get canceled for saying that. No, you know what? I think
fuck F45. I always say fuck F45 too. Because I have clients who are like, they're just like, I just want to be destroyed after every workout. And I'm like, that's not the point of work. If you just want to feel destroyed,
not the point.
Yeah, you can go, right?
I'm like, I literally try to explain to people, I'm like, that feeling at the end of the class? Like, when you do a Barry's boot camp class and it's so hot in there, like they don't have aircon for some reason.
Yeah.
And like they smash you so hard that you walk out feeling like it was worth the ridiculous amount of money that you just paid for that stupid class. It's all mind games. Like none of it's actually what's giving you any like longevity in your like health journey at all. Like there's nothing like long-term about this for you. It's all about instant gratification, which again is our culture thrives on this. And it's just taking advantage of that like component. But anyways, now we're really diving into how I feel about it. But anyway, so the gym that I actually was working for, and now I'm going to give them like a big shout out. So I actually came across this gym because it was like similar to an F45 in the sense of it's like this super small space with like circuit training. But the thing about it was that they basically like took all the best things about F45. So it's scalable, it's affordable for people to open one. And it has that kind of like team training atmosphere, but every single person in the room is actually doing their own program. And it's actually super innovative and really interesting. It's like very high tech. I've never seen anything like it. It was a startup as well. So I literally got to be a part of them, like building this like it was like new technology, and it was actually like there was a lot of, like troubleshooting and issues, but it was like so interesting being a part of it. They actually ended up rebranding now, and they're called Fatillion, and they're still like pushing, like they're still going in Sydney. But for example, like I would put women would come in and they would want to do, the F45 style, because they do have that there, because they know the consumer wants it. But I would literally, it would take sometimes weeks for me to talk people into training, changing their like F45 style workouts to like doing the heavy weight training. Like I was like, please, like I promise you, if you want to lose fat, you need to focus on building muscle. Like it's literally like, and this gym gave people the capability. So it still brought in those customers that are like obsessed with the like F45 style, but then you could like slowly kind of transition them into like weight trainers, which was like really cool concept. And I really liked working there. I thought it was a really cool concept, but then I got pregnant, and that's the end of that story. And I don't think I'll ever go back, but I do appreciate that time. I think like I learned a lot, and it was like so beneficial.
Well, that was kind of
my journey.
Well, that was where I had the next question was, when you went out there, I do remember you sharing that you were going to be training people out there. I saw clips of that because I just remember you met Harry, and then did you get pregnant and then go back, or did you move
Hi, everyone.
like before you got pregnant?
No. I moved to Australia in December of 2019, and then I got pregnant in September, so almost a year later.
Okay, yeah. So you moved there, and I remember seeing clips you talking about the gym you were working at. That I can't believe that I mistake that for F45. Shame on me.
How dare you.
But
so offensive.
And then I remember we always followed each other, and I would click on your page when you'd post stuff. And then one day I'm like, yo, what the hell is happening? Like your following had grown, and your content you'd actually started creating content as opposed to just sharing stuff. Because correct me if I'm wrong, did it start with you just sharing?
Switch, right? So it's like, okay, so what ended up happening was, and I was always an Instagram girl. Like I always shared those things, but it was mostly like that, like, hey, like this is my dating profile.
Yeah, basically. That is really like, that's what Instagram had become at that point. Because we chatted a lot about that when you were single. And
yes.
I actually remember I was watching one of your videos, and you were talking about how one of the key things that made Harry the right man for you was that you had spent time being single and like learning to love being single, so that when the right person came along, you were thinking, am I going to give up my peace of enjoying being single for this man, as opposed to, I just don't want to be lonely, so anyone who shows me attention, which a lot of people have done this. I've done this in my past too, where just anything is better than nothing if you're feeling lonely. But you had taken the time to be like, I'm going to really enjoy and love myself alone. That way I'm actually giving that up to be with someone, which means that I'm fully both feet in, 10 toes down. And that's when you and I were friends, was when you were having fun and really enjoying your life, I remember at that time. And then you met Harry, and I remember when you met him, it wasn't expected.
With myself. Yes, that was like very intentional time in my life when we met, and I was doing all that. I was, exploring the personal training career. Like I was just like not focused on relationships at all. Like I had a breakup that was, at the time it felt super awful, but it ended up being like the biggest blessing, because I chose after that to say like, nope, like I'm done. Like I want to be completely single, and I want to just focus on like things that make my life like genuinely so full and interesting and happy. I want to like sleep in my bed with all of my clothes on it if I want, and maybe some leftover dinner. Like I just don't want to give a shit about what anyone thinks, and I just want to do what I want to do. And I highly recommend that to everyone, that you need to like genuinely take time to be alone. And if you really don't like being alone, that's your actually biggest red flag, and you need to be alone more, because like you will learn to like it, and you might actually create like a life for yourself during that time that is so good and so happy and so fulfilled that somebody who is actually of really high value is going to come across you and want to so badly like come into that life instead of like you going into somebody else's life, which is like what I had done in the past, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's very typical, and you have to make that mistake.
I honestly think I think breakups are the most like if the thing that will help you evolve the most if you tackle them the right way. They can also be what ruins you and makes you desperate for the wrong attention and the wrong people. But if you like learn, like truly learn and acknowledge that you're like making these decisions too, then it can be the most transformative thing that you can ever go through. Like I look back at the breakups that I have, and I think they're the most pivotal moments in my life that have brought me to where I am now, like genuinely. So I think breakups are super important.
Well, yeah, that's...
break up with your boyfriend.
You heard it.
Like legit.
Like,
just break it.
You sound like
a
you sound like a fuckboy who's like talking to a girl who has a boyfriend. He's like, you just give this poetic speech of, I honestly think the most you'll ever learn is if you go through a breakup. And I think that's why you should text him right now at 2:30 in the morning as his bar closes.
Actually,
and I think
I'll
you'll
text
learn.
him for you.
Yeah, I'll text him for you.
No, but fuck girl energy was what got me through it. Like I was, because again, like protect your peace. Like, and if that means that you have to hurt some feelings along the way, guess what? Women are so scared of hurting people's feelings, especially men's feelings. Men don't care about hurting our feelings. Like why do we have to like tiptoe around everybody and be kind and nice? It's like, no, I was dating a lot. I was definitely dating a lot. But if I didn't like you, I'm like, sorry, like you're literally just not what I'm interested in right now. And like that, it's okay to be selfish. It's okay to have that era of your life where you're genuinely just putting your energy into you. And like, because let me tell you something, when you become a mom, which I think is genuinely the most amazing thing that you can do, there is no more, like there's much less living life to figure out who you are. So you got to try and figure it out before that. Like if you can.
Yeah. You basically, you want to enter parenthood. Like you'll never have resolved everything, but you'll want to have resolved a good chunk enough that you're like, okay, I know I'm going to fuck my kids up on some level, but I'm trying to do harm reduction. I want to fuck them up as least as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to be like, I want to like be, how do I say this? If I want my kids to be badass little kids and like do the right thing and take care of themselves and, you know, like have a balanced life and have healthy relationships and things like that. Well, I got to do that too. Like you can expect your kids to be better than you. Like you have to, everyone says that, right? Like, oh, well, the next generation, we always want our next generation to be one step up from us. But it's like, but you have to also lead by example. Like kids just look to you like that's what they will see. Like, I'll tell you right now, they don't listen. So like you better be showing them because they do not listen.
Well, it's funny you say that because I didn't listen and I bet you didn't listen. Like we don't listen as kids. And then I'm not a parent, so I'm assuming, but then you become a parent and you're like, why don't they listen? And it's like, well, don't you remember being a kid? Like you didn't listen. I didn't listen at all. What I saw really informed and shaped what I was going to do.
Habits, normalizing things. Like that is my goal as their parent is like, if there's certain things that I want them to have in their life, I need to normalize that. Like I need those things to be baseline. Like that's the best way you can set them up, I think, personally.
Okay, so I don't even think we have gotten to what you do.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's so sick of what I do, I'm sure, at this point. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so basically, I got pregnant with the twins. It was COVID. Okay, I'm stuck in Australia. Babies. Yeah. So I'm in Australia. The country gets locked down, and like not like Canada lockdown where everyone was going to Greece for the summer. Like for real lockdown. Like Australia got for real lockdown. Like you could not leave the country without permission, and you could not enter the country without permission, like from the government, like literally. And those permissions were like hard done by, like, it wasn't like you were just getting it every time. So basically I was in a situation, I'm pregnant, which is exciting. I was trying to get pregnant, which was good, but I wasn't trying to get pregnant with twins. So when I found out I was having twins, like everything changed. I freaked out. Literally, I freaked out. I was, on one hand, I was like, this is a miracle. I'm the luckiest woman alive. But then the more logical side of me was like, what did I just enter into? I don't even have my mom here. Like, what the hell am I doing? And like, genuinely, what am I going to do? How does this look? Because again, like monkey see, monkey do, the things that are normalized to you and are your comforts are the things that are going to help you like cope with the world around you. And I had never seen anybody have twins. I'm like, I don't even know. Can I breastfeed them? Like, how do I give birth to twins? Like literally it was just like a black hole of like scary thoughts. And any like mom who's pregnant with twins or multiples will tell you it's a high risk pregnancy technically because it's just a little bit more complicated. And then, so on top of that, pregnancy is already scary enough. Then you're told you're like a high risk or like a complicated pregnancy. And then Google becomes your enemy because you don't want to Google anything if you're pregnant with twins. You will just literally find yourself like terrified. So I ended up like really a huge thing for me mental health wise was connecting with real twin moms on Instagram. So I would literally search hashtags like hashtag twin pregnancy. And I would literally search it and like find people who were posting about it. And then I would just add them and I would literally slide into these strangers' DMs and I would ask them the most personal, vulnerable questions like, you know, how did you sleep them? This one girl who is so sweet, by the way, I know her sister in real life, but her name is Annalise. And she had twins before me. And I literally made her, I remember DMing with her and I made her send me a photo of her crib like that she had. And she drew a diagram of how the kids were sleeping because I was so nervous about how they would sleep. So anyways, I just knew there was like a gap. Like I knew there was people out there who were doing this too, like spiraling and needing to like grab onto something real. And I was like, I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to be that. And I started like documenting the pregnancy. Like I would do like my scans and like I would just post a picture at first and just I would say all my symptoms during that period. I would like show my workouts. I would be honest about that I couldn't work out. Like at the beginning, I wasn't so vulnerable as I am now. I was still very much like caught up in that, like, I need to look perfect and I need people to think my life is amazing. And I need, you know, so I was kind of giving what I was comfortable with. But then as it grew, like all of a sudden it just started catching on. And now like most of my audience are other moms who are like exactly looking for that. Like, something real to grab onto, a real person, like showing what they did, how they did it. You know, I think I have more of a lifestyle component now. My kids are older, so it's less about like routines and stuff. But the early ages of my content was literally, I would show how I bathe the twins by myself. Like I would just show like, because it's not simple like for people. And I would literally just like show routines and like show like how I sleep train them, like so show all of these things. And again, in a world where moms are being judged for every single thing, like not everyone's willing to go out there in the world and say, this is what I did. It's not whether you like it or not. I'm just telling people the truth. I'm not telling you what to do, but this is what I did. You know what I mean? And I think like that was really refreshing for people. So it did start to catch on and it's grown a lot. And now it's like my full-time job. And yeah, my boys are 3 now. And so it's been crazy. It's been really a crazy, crazy ride. And I'm so like grateful for it for sure.
So these people that you were DMing, were they just moms or were they content creators in the space?
Yeah. Well, so typically like there are people who, I don't think a lot of them were considering themselves content creators at the time. I think that term has become a lot more used lately, but they were people who were wanting at least they were people who were wanting to reach a wider audience that wasn't like their friends and family. Okay. So I think that is technically people who were creating content. like I consider like when I made that switch to like posting about my life for my friends and family and whoever came across me to like posting for strangers, that's when I think I started making content. When
Okay.
I was posting that stuff about my pregnancy, that was in hopes that I would reach a wide audience of people that I didn't know that were just like people that had something in common with me. So I think a lot of the people I connected with were kind of doing that too, but they didn't really maybe know that. And now I have like tons of, content creative moms that I have like what do you say, like a parasocial relationship with
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
yeah, but
Because
normal moms, like normal people, normal
wow,
moms, like who were just out there just like sharing their journey.
it is a thing now that I do this all the time. And you brought up the point. I mean, I'm not a woman or a mom, but so I can't speak to this. But the fear of doing everything wrong all the time, it transcends parenthood. It's just kind of everywhere. Like, I don't want to do my tax. I don't want to like write this wrong. I don't want to do this wrong. So I'll YouTube. Like, I don't want to cook this chicken
Yeah.
wrong. So I'll go on YouTube and I'll find a
Mhm.
recipe. And those people that I went and sought those answers from, those are people I've bought in their products. I've bought in cookbooks from those people because I needed help with something. And when I searched up somewhere, there was someone's charisma and the way they delivered their message and everything resonated with me. And then they helped me solve a problem. And I'm saying this with trivial things. So I imagine not only being a new mom, but a new twin mom, it's double the amount of pressure, I would assume. And you're thinking,
Yeah.
I don't want to fuck this up, but there's not a ton of specific information. And you know what? You might not be around anyone in your close circle because you live in Australia at this point. And even here, knowing twin moms with experience
Yeah.
isn't that common. So you're looking for answers online, and people showed you how much value there is in that. And then you just kind of said, I'm going to do this too.
100%.
Because the next twin mom who's scared and nervous and doesn't know what to do, if I can help them with at least any of these posts that help relieve that stress, like, personally how valuable that is.
100%. And like I get messages all the time from people being like, you have no idea like what your page has done for me. Like I get husbands reaching out being like, thank you so much. Like my wife, my wife has found so much like, like validation or whatever it is. Like I try to have like a mixture of things so it can like connect with people. Like I want to show the funny side of it. Like I want to show the side that's like motherhood is a bit messy. And like, I also want to show the highlights too. And then I also want to show like, I want to be educational as well. Like I really like that part of it. And then, sometimes like you just start like now it's to the point where people know me, right? They're not just like listening to what I'm saying. So they also now like I'm just showing them what we're doing and what we're up to. And it becomes more of a lifestyle thing. But at first it was very much educational, inspirational, and also just like showing moms like they can do this. Like they're going to be fine, because I think there's dark days, especially for twin moms and moms of triplets. Like there's dark days.
Yeah.
And especially in the first like 6 months, it's really, really hard. And I just like loved when people would see that, oh, like, thank you so much. Like I'm going to get through this because I saw this post. And like, there's so much value in that. There's so much value in that for sure.
Because I think if you're ever coaching someone or helping someone through something, a lot of it actually is reminding them that it's going to be okay. And that the dark days are normal. And that could be with the context we're talking about new parents. It could be with coaching clients with fitness. Most of the time, and you remember this when you were a PT, you're kind of just reminding them, hey, that's okay. Like it's not everything is the end of the world. There's times when you're coaching to elevate and you're really teaching. And there's times when you're obviously celebrating and feeling joy. And then there's times where you're really just walking someone down from freaking out.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So,
And that this is like an ever evolving thing. It's not going to be the same. It's ever changing. Like it's going to have its ups and downs. It's very similar to like a fitness journey, honestly.
just really any journey, to be honest, is it parallels with these same steps too. Now, you said you intentionally made it so that you weren't, when you were sharing your stuff, you weren't putting any judgment on it. You were just saying, this is what it is, and here's what it's like. Well, is there a reason you did that specifically? Because I find that interesting.
So, okay. So I think like one thing I have learned, and I like to explain it like this to people. What happens on social media in all aspects of it is a very potent reflection of what's actually happening, the dynamics that are happening in the real world, but in this very like explosive, potent, way more like out there way. Whereas in the real world, a lot of these dynamics are more like under the surface, passive aggressive. Like these dynamics are still very much real in the real world. It's just people aren't really acting on them, saying on it out loud. So it's kind of a more like low key version of it. But one thing I have learned definitely is that like the motherhood space is probably one of the most difficult spaces to be a creative, because just like in the real world, people are very, very quick to judge moms. Like I think people's parenting is probably one of the most judged things by their peers, by their family members, by their mother-in-laws, by their, like, it's such, like it's a genuinely like a cultural issue, I think. But then on social media, it's exacerbated. Like it's like times 100,000, because everybody's of course behind a keyboard and they don't know you in real life. And they think because you have more followers that you're not going to see what they say, but you do see it. So like, I'm not going to say at first I was a little bit more guarded, but then I don't know. Sometimes when people are so awful to you and are so judgmental to you of something that you feel is like really actually quite important and like your philosophy as a parent, and you're super passionate about it, and then people knock you for it, it makes you like realize that there's so many moms out there who are being judged for the stupidest things. And it actually makes me want to yell louder. So I started to actually get way more honest and really just be like, okay, like I will be the one who, you know, like dies on this hill because I can handle it. Like that's literally a lot of my content has been that stuff. Like I remember when I sleep trained my twins, it was like World War fucking 3 on my page. Like, and I'm like, oh yeah, you don't like it?
What were people starting beef about?
It's a very controversial subject. Because I think the older school methods of it were quite harsh for kids to go through. But like, again, like as everything, you know, as things progress, we learn new techniques and we figure out a way to like, you know, make it work. And again, like nobody's walking in your shoes as a mom. Like nobody knows that I was like on the brink of like having to, you know, admit myself into a facility because I was having like literal panic attacks 10 times a day. I was so sleep deprived. Had rage. Like my body wasn't functioning. My milk was drying up. Like people don't realize what journey you're walking and are so quick to judge you for something as you're selfish. When in reality, the most selfish thing I could do is continue to bleed out and not like, you know, patch my wounds for my kids that need me to show up for them. And so like everyone's just so quick to judge mothers, and they don't know like what they don't know the path that they're walking or what they're going through. And when it comes to sleep training, like I would much rather have kids that like confidently sleep on their own and give me time to recuperate so that I can show up the next day and be what they need and not be ready to snap, crying, so exhausted I can't even like bring them to the park, like miserable. My relationship is falling apart with their dad. Like I would much rather us all get the rest we need and show up as a better mom during those hours when we're awake, if that makes sense. And I had to make that decision as their mom. And I knew so many women out there were struggling mentally and physically, literally killing themselves.
Yeah.
But because of the judgment that people would give, they wouldn't consider doing something like this, even though like the data and the research shows that it's absolutely okay, even healthy. And like, I was just like, okay, this is my hill. I'm going to die on it. And like so many moms were like, yes, thank you. Like, thank you.
No, I
You know
believe
what I
that.
mean? It's just like,
Going about it, unless you are preaching, I don't even know what, unless you're preaching like like religion or philosophy or something, we really don't need to attach moral labels and judgments on everything. But we do. Like, we do it all of the time in areas where it doesn't warrant. So, for example, like I see it in fitness all the time. I see it with parents. I see it with, in kind of everything you do. We'll say, well, you shouldn't do that. That's bad. And
yeah,
even if it was quote unquote bad, even if it was, it goes, even if what you're doing opposes the evidence, one thing that people don't understand is the evidence also tends to support that shaming someone never really
yeah,
changes behavior anyways. And sometimes
yeah,
it actually has the opposite effect. So in nutrition, there's plenty of research that will show that if you feel ashamed about your eating, if I actually shame you into it, maybe one of the coping mechanisms you have is resorting to eating. So I shame you, and
yeah.
ironically, you might actually go home and self-indulge in food more to help soothe yourself, ironically, because you felt the stigma that was
Mhm.
attached onto you. And it's like people think that shaming someone will change their behavior, but it almost
Not
never
effective.
does. And if it does, I don't even know if that's good too, because if
Yeah.
if you were talking to a friend, or I guess another mom with your audience, if you use that power to say you should never do this and you should never do that and it's wrong to do this and blah blah blah, and then you had all these people who were just following what you were saying to a T because they would feel afraid of doing something wrong, so because they were so afraid of doing something wrong that you told them they now were doing something right. I don't even know if that's a good situation too, because they're not
Mhm.
actually showing
Yeah.
up with love and care and like being present. They're just kind of following a fear-based model of a rule that was given to them by someone else. And it is true, like people
The
do it
best
all the time.
example of this, the best example of this is when you have a friend who's in a shitty relationship,
Yeah.
toxic relationship. What do? You don't shame them, because guess what? They're going to close up and they're
Hmm.
probably going to go actually further into that person. You have to like be there, be open ears. Everyone knows that. Like, you can't just go to the friend in the toxic relationship and you know you really want her to get out of that relationship. You can't just be like, you know what I mean? Like, it has to
100%.
be because they know that they want out for them, and not, you know what I mean? Because most of the time, if you make them feel ashamed of themselves, they're going to like close up and probably go into that habit further and get further away from you, who actually
Yeah.
has good intentions, but like
They'll double
you're just
down.
losing all your money. Yeah, there has to be it's that's like the perfect example,
That,
right? Like,
that, that
we've
actually
all been
is.
in that situation. Like, all of us have been in this situation.
And they ironically will go they often they'll tell their partner, like, yo,
Yeah.
Kate said this
And then
about
you'll be the
you.
bad guy.
And then the partner's like,
Yeah.
well, Kate does this and that. And like, you're going to trust a woman and it's just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It's literally the worst thing you can do. And it
Mhm.
happens to, like, I've seen it happen to moms all the time where everything they do is just under a microscope. So I really love
Oh
that
my
you
God.
go
It's
about it in such an
awful.
ajudgmental way. Because I think what I do is a little bit less, I'm not trying to discount what I do, but it's less significant than like parenting and like truly raising kids. But on the same
I don't
level,
know. Like,
I still operate from that
I think
same
what you do,
ajudgmental.
yeah, totally. Yes. And like, again, that's like a hard thing to learn.
Yeah.
But I think again, like, I think because because I know a little bit about your fitness journey, you weren't always like the super fit guy, right? Like,
No.
you had your own body journey, but I think you have a connection to that part of the journey more than a lot of trainers do, which also gives you that, like, it first of all gives you like perspective and humility. But like most trainers, I truly think the puzzle piece that they're missing is that they've actually just never actually gone through a fat loss journey. Like,
Yeah.
so like, right?
Well,
And like, they've never been in that situation. So they don't, like, you can, which I'm not saying makes you a bad trainer if you don't have that piece, but
you've been weight
it
stable your
might
whole
give
life.
you
You're a bad trainer.
your shit. Let me see you fat. Give me a picture when you were chubby, or else I'm
Yeah.
not hiring you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it just might give you that like component of like empathy and
Mm.
understanding that some of those trainers might not have, which is just, it's completely fair. There's only certain things you can only learn if you've done,
Yeah.
like,
I agree
truly,
with
like,
that.
and that component of like true empathy and understanding of a situation, that's like something that would be really hard to have if you've never actually experienced it. And like, that's the other thing too, is like motherhood, for example, is exactly like that. I wish I could go back in time and be so much nicer to my own mom. Like, I wish I could go back in time and be a better friend, as more supportive sister to like my, the people in my life who had kids before me. Like, but again, you don't have that perspective until you've gone through it. And like, again, like I've also gone through enough of the motherhood journey now. I'm 3 years in, and I have 2 kids who are being raised side by side. So I get this like really interesting social experiment like in front of my eyes. And I often feel like I just want to shout at the rooftops to other moms, like, it's like, if you feel like you're doing everything wrong and like this is why your child's behaving a certain way or whatever, I'm here to tell you that's not true, because I raise my kids the exact same way. They eat the same foods. I read them the same books. I let them watch the same amount of screen time. Like, I breastfed them the same amount. I formula fed them the same amount. All these things that moms get so caught up in the details of, like, whether they're a good parent or not. Yeah. All of these little things. Like, I'm telling you right now, I have raised those boys the exact same way, gave them the same amount of cuddles, sleep trained them the same. And yet their personalities are so beyond different. They're like completely different. And so like personality and these things are so predisposed. Like, people think that they have so much control over it. Yeah. I will tell you right now, if you love your kids and like you wake up every day, like wanting them to be safe and happy, you're doing the right thing. And like, you cannot control everything. You really cannot. Like, it's not in your control, which in some ways I hope relieves that stress on moms. It's
liberating to know that you can't control every outcome.
You can't. You do your best, and like your intentions are super great, and like just love your kids, especially in the first 3 years. The main thing that they need from you is like love. That's really, if you can do that part, like you're already giving them the best chance. And then all of those little details in between, of course, do your optimization or whatever you want to call it. But like, really just love them, be there for them, make them feel safe. Those are the main things that you should really be obsessing over if you want your kids, I think, to have a really great start. Yeah. And then everything else, stop judging each other about it. Stop paying attention to what everyone else is doing. Like, truly.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because it parallels so many other things that I think humans struggle with. Is we will nitpick the fine details that really don't matter and ignore like the big rock in front of us, which for parenting is unconditionally loving and showing up for your kids and letting them know, like, I am here for you. You give them a foundation of stability that they know they can always land on. It doesn't matter. Yes. Like, the other things matter, right? Like how you sleep train them might have some effect. What their diet is going to have effect, whatever, like the smaller details. But if they have that foundation, there's no optimization detail you can do that will override that. And it's very similar to how you go about personal relationships. It's how you go about with fitness. Like, go to the gym and try to eat nutritiously. If you do those 2 things, you'll be doing pretty good. But do you need to put everything on a food scale and time every macronutrient? No, like, that might be for the down the line. But if you're doing everything from the foundation there, like, you really are doing an incredible job. And it's not worth the amount of stress that we manifest in our mind of, am I doing everything perfect?
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, like, again, you might, who knows, like, your kid maybe will be, a little bit smarter or whatever it is, but it's not like, it's not going to completely change the trajectory of their life if you, gave them, like, say, you let them watch a half an hour more TV than that mom did. Stop obsessing over that stuff. Like, for real. It's just like, it's the outcome isn't worth the the amount of input you're putting into like those decisions. Like, my kids, I like to say this all the time. Like, again, like, my kids developmentally, one walked 5 months before the other.
Damn,
okay. Like,
he's going to be chirping him for the rest of his life about that.
Yeah. I know. Right. And like, seriously though, like, but then the other one talked. And it still to this day has a much more extensive vocabulary than the other one. He just is more physically inclined than his brother, and his brother is more like vocally inclined, or however you want to say, like conversationally, or however you want to say. But the point is that like these things are predisposed. I didn't like read more to the vocal one and like take this one jogging. Like I didn't do different things. People think they have that much control. And because I got to learn so quick that there is no control over these things, it was like freeing for me. And I like to remind moms who have only that one baby, like, I promise you, like, don't compare your kid to other kids. Like, it's just not, they're all different. Yeah. Like, they really are. Even if you feed them and do everything the exact same, they're going to be different.
Well, because you're like, I have biologically the same kid to compare my kid to, and it's still drastically different. Like, genetically.
Dude, they were born in the same day. Like, they're grown in the same womb at the same time. They literally got the same food, like, that I was eating. Like, all of these things that people obsess over. And I'm like, hey, I'm like living proof that like you can literally give two kids the exact same like nurture and they will still be so different. Their temperaments are different. The way that they like, one cries way more than the other. One is cheekier than the other. Like it's not like any is worse behaved than the other. They're just different personalities. And those personalities will truly lead their development in a lot of ways. And I got to learn that really quick. So I find I always talk about that on my page because I think, again, moms are so annoying and hard on each other and themselves.
Well, did you learn this lesson as you progressed through motherhood? I assume this was a lesson that you had to really learn the hard way.
Oh, I think the walking thing, when they walked so differently, that was that's when I really knew. I kind of was getting it more. Like I was getting it from like 6 months on. I was like, okay. Like kind of understanding, like I can't expect them to do milestones at the same time. And then when they walked at such different paces and literally it reflected their personalities, like my son Brooks, who walked at like 9.5 months old, his personality was like so energetic, like, you know, so much more like cheeky and like, even like a little bit defiant and like very like motivated and very active, like very active. And then the other one is like I call him my little like Kung Fu Panda. Like he's like way more like, yeah, he can be super energetic too, but he prefers to be lazy. Like he will like lay on the floor with his cars and like literally lay with his face on the floor and play with his cars. Like he's a little couch potato. And he didn't walk until he was 15 months old because purely he just didn't give a shit to do it. Like literally.
He's going to be a reader.
It wasn't that he had something wrong with his legs. Yeah. And it wasn't like he had something wrong with his legs. Yeah.
He'll be a
and
cerebral one.
Then what happened, he started talking way before Brooks. Like, and he, to this day, he's Brooks' translator. Like Brooks will say something, he'll be like, Mommy,
no way.
Said he wants it. Yeah.
That's unreal.
Like, for real. It's so interesting. Like, it's so interesting. And I got to experience this like absolutely amazing little social experiment. And it's every day blows my mind, like still to this day. But it's also, given me a ton of perspective very early on in my motherhood journey that moms typically only get once they've had 2 or 3 kids.
Yeah.
And then even then, they still blame themselves because, oh, well, I was a better mom to the first one because I only had one. And that's when all these dynamics start coming in. And then moms blame themselves for that too. Whereas I got this like very specific situation where I could learn very quickly that I cannot control all these variables and that it doesn't even matter if I do.
That's such a huge lesson to learn. Like truly like being able to understand that you don't control every variable. So you have always been someone who's like, you worked in the fitness industry before, obviously. You worked in the fitness industry when you moved there. And you also like have always been someone who's regularly worked out. Now, I got to know what that was like through pregnancy and post, because that I know can be quite the challenge to maintain a fitness routine and go through it. So what was that journey like going through pregnancy and even postpartum?
Okay, so I like look back at this time in my life. Like I used to train a lot and people used to ask me, what are you training for? Like, what do you want to be, a bodybuilder? Like, do you ever get those questions? Like, what are you training for? And I literally used to say, I am training for life and whatever it's going to throw at me. And I used to say it as a joke. Like, damn. I don't know if I have to run away from a bear. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to fight a man off that wants to sexually assault me. Like, I literally used to say stuff like that. I'm like, I want to be training for life because I don't know what the hell it's going to throw at me. Well, I figured out real quick what I was training for, and that was to go through a twin pregnancy. Like, I'm telling you right now, my body's ability to recover is 99% because of all of the training that I did previous to being pregnant. So whatever I did during the pregnancy was, I think, really great for my mental health. But I think what really played the huge game changer was that I was super strong. I had really great body awareness, which is massive for pregnancy because you're going through tons of body changes, and like you have to have like a really great like mind muscle connection to continue to like pattern movements properly, and to also just like be able to know like, okay, like I'm going through a lot right now with my core and I need to have good posture, and I need to like, there's all these little nuanced things that have nothing to do with physique that are so much more about having that like mind body connection and like understanding your body and getting you through something that could really injure you badly. And like, if you aren't careful, like you could really hurt yourself. Your pelvis is really compromised during pregnancy in general, let alone a multiples pregnancy. And again, my core strength was so developed that it really helped me a lot to bring it back together after I gave birth, which people discount that. It's like everyone wants to know everyone wants to know, well, what waist trainer did you wear after you gave birth? It's like, well, yeah, here's the waist trainer I wore, but also take into account that I was seriously training in the gym for 6 years before I was pregnant. Like that's very, very important to understand.
And then how long into your pregnancy did you train for? Because I assume I remember seeing clips of you training, but with having twins, you got bigger quicker, which I assume made it a little more challenging. Like when did you have to stop?
So when I went into the pregnancy, I was still a trainer at the time and I was working out a lot still. I basically took my philosophy going into training was don't do any like super high intensity cardio. That was what I thought at the time. I don't necessarily. Oh, and purely because I didn't really train that way anyway. So like I didn't want to like, right? Yeah. So the overall philosophy and what I will tell moms usually if they reach out to me is don't do anything you haven't done before. Like don't try to like get a new PR while you're pregnant. Like try to just maintain whatever you're comfortable with. So if you weight train 4 days a week in like a 10 to 12 rep range, just keep doing that. And like, but also the other thing that I tried to always tell people is just really, really slow down and focus on form, like form. If you have to lift a little bit like lighter because your form is not, because again, every single day, every hour, your body is changing when you're pregnant. And so a movement could feel good this week and then next week it feels completely different. And so I always was like very slow about everything, take longer breaks in between, really like work on the mind body. Like don't just do anything that like feels, and if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Like it's not worth it. But yes, training is it was super important to me throughout the pregnancy. But like I said, like if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Well, it started to not feel right, like way sooner than I thought. Like I think I completely stopped going, like doing workout, like lifting weights. I stopped at maybe like 27 weeks, which was way earlier than I thought I would stop. Like I thought I would be that girl who was going till like a week before. And my body was just not handling it. Like
you want to
literally,
go
I was wearing enough weight. It was crazy. Like it was so crazy. Like I literally was people don't realize like I'm actually not, again, when you see people on social media, you don't actually know how big they are. Like I'm not that big. Like I'm a small person. I gained 42% of my body weight during that pregnancy.
Damn.
Like I literally almost doubled my body weight. And it's all sitting right here.
Yeah, that's the thing. It throws off all your, like you were saying before, how 1 week you'll do something, the next week it feels weird. I don't think people understand that your actual internal physics change because more weight is being pressed in front of you.
And also the other thing that's hugely important, and again, with twin pregnancies, like you have more hormonal like changes happening. The hormonal changes are also extremely important to pay attention to because certain things are happening. Like literally 1 week you could be fine, and then the next week your ligaments are like bleh, floppy. It's like there's so many changes happening that have nothing to do with what you can see. And so like you're, again, like everything in your body, for example, you could probably rock a yoga class like a champion, like you've never done before while pregnant, because your body's like gets a little bit like loose. Everything loosens up to make space. And like, you're right, like your rib cage is moving, like your hips are widening, like literally all of these crazy, crazy changes are happening in such a short time that like you have to be I genuinely believe what got me through it was my extensive training and understanding my body, knowing how each part feels, like having worked out, every muscle I could think of in my body and knowing how to like access that like connection and understanding whether this is working for me or it's not. And I think a lot of people lack that awareness, and that's when training can be like bad and you can get injured, and you don't want to get injured if you're pregnant. It's already awful enough. So yeah.
When you said how you want to keep it the same, that is the general advice that most experts in the field give anyways, and that I've read. And then I've actually applied with coaching clients too, because I've trained a couple of pregnant women through their pregnancies. And the one woman that I trained, you might have remembered when I trained her at Equinox.
I remember. She was crushing it.
Dude, like
beast. I know. I remember. And was my motivation.
Okay. So Kate.
And then I'm like, damn.
Second trimester. This woman did 3 sets of 10 single arm push-ups each side. Because before
I don't know why she was like.
Because before she was pregnant, that was
do that now,
dude. Before she was pregnant, that was one of the big goals she had. She's like, I want to be able to do like 15 single arm push-ups. So she had actually got to it, and then consulting with her doctor and everything, we're like, we're not gonna. But the first trimester, we actually kind of kept everything the same, anyways. She was in such elite shape that what she was used to was insane. But then as it progressed, we just reduced the volume, we reduced the intensity, but we kept a lot of her movements the same. We had to give up some movements, like the classic one most people got to give up is deadlifting, because your belly just literally gets in the way.
Yeah.
You're like, and your
pelvis is so like compromised. Yeah. So the deadlift is a bit tough.
But 6 months in, she actually was like, I want to see how many I can get today. I was like, all right, like this is safe. Like we're not going to push it, but let's see what you can do. I was like, we were basically using a lot of reps in reserve. So I'd be like, hey, I want every set for you to be able to tell me at the end. I could have done 3 to 4 more. And we didn't push past that. Last trimester was basically everything was 5 reps in reserve, but she was just based on like very similar to what you're saying.
Love that.
Form and keeping taps in the tank. But this woman got 3 sets of 10 single arm push-ups.
What a legend. Like I could never do that.
Yeah, I still can't. I still can't do that.
I don't even get it. Like I don't get it. But that's mom power right there.
Dude, 3 months after she had her kid, went right back to where she was. Not a social media person.
But again, Dylan, like people don't get that component. It's like the bounce back or whatever. It's not a bounce back. It's called recovery. Yeah. It's literally an injury recovery. I try to change people's like perspective on this. I'm like, it's not fat loss, guys. It's literally your abdominals are split apart and they need to come back together. And it's basically like an injury recovery. Your body has like put itself in a compromised position to bring life into the world, which is great. But now it's kind of in a bad way, and you need to focus on recovery and not. It's not like get back in the gym, you're lazy. It's like, no, you need to like do recovery techniques, and then we can talk about getting back in the gym.
I really like that framing of recovery, because that would parallel with athletes. If an athlete gets hurt and then when they get back to recovery, you're not going to say, oh, what was their secret to being a professional athlete? It's like, well, they were one before. They just tweaked their knee, and now that they're back. Exactly. Right? And same with you. You had a high level of fitness before you had your pregnancy, which framed through the lens of, I recovered from the injury to my body. That was the miracle of childbirth. Mm-hmm. But I could get back to it because that was my previous state. I wasn't achieving new highs. I was just kind of getting back to my homeostatic norms.
Literally. I was just recovering. Yeah. Like it's just, and like, I think, everyone wants to know, it's one of the most asked questions that I've had over the years is that, how did you bounce back? How does your stomach flat? how did you lose the fat in your stomach? And what I want to tell people often is like, first of all, if you're already pregnant, I can't fully help you here because I do strongly believe that how you treat your body previous to going into a pregnancy is going to be a huge determiner for how. That's typically why, like, and you'll hear a lot of women say that they bounce back after the first pregnancy, but then after the second one and the third one, it wasn't so easy. And that's typically what happens is that person, like, you know, you have abdominals that haven't gone through that like growth injury, however you want to say. And then so they do have that previous build to kind of their body kind of wants to go back to.
Yeah.
But then if you don't like give yourself time between pregnancies to rebuild strength, you know, core, all these things, then your baseline becomes further away than what, does that make sense?
100%.
It's like, right. And so then that's kind of why it gets harder and harder to bounce back because the back is not that, you know, like different from where you are now. Like you never gave your body a proper chance to recover. Yeah. And by that, I don't mean you got pregnant too quick. I mean that a lot of moms don't have time or energy to take care of themselves once they become a mom. So then it's very easy. If you weren't already super regimented in fitness and nutrition and all these things like I was, it's not going to get any easier after you become a mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of the times, like, you know, then you don't have the time and energy. You're not getting good quality sleep. Like everything's working against you after you have a kid to, you know, build muscle and all these things. And then you have another kid. And then again, your baseline is so much different than it was the first time. And so then it gets just harder. But yeah, I think that's a major component. And again, I get asked this all the time. And it's always like it's a sensitive subject. It never goes well when I talk about it, ever. I always get torn to shreds, always, every single time. And so I don't touch the subject a lot because like personally, there's so many reasons, but obviously body image is a sensitive subject. And then body image postpartum is a way more sensitive subject. And so like you have to be really careful about how you approach it. And on a 60-second reel, it's almost impossible to get your thoughts across. Yeah. So you end up getting a little bit. So typically what I'll do is I'll say something to catch your attention, which is what short form content is for. And then I'll elaborate in the caption or, you know what I mean? And 100%. Then typically people don't actually pay attention to what you're saying in the caption. They grab onto whatever triggered them about what you said or did. And, you know, transformation posts, transformation side by side, things like that can be really triggering for people. I get that. But again, I also will die on the hill that like, it's okay to want to recover your body after having a pregnancy. And it does not have to be normalized to like not have time, energy. Like women should feel strongly about taking care of themselves. And I understand that because I'm a mom too, that like, it's really easy to just always put ourselves on the back burner. But like, I am so passionate about reminding people that like, you're allowed to care about your body and your health because this isn't about the way you look. That's the other thing. People get really misconstrued. People think it's like some vanity thing. It has nothing to do with that, especially coming from a personal trainer background, especially coming from, you know, like the massage therapy background where you're talking about remedial like therapy for people whose bodies are a mess. Like, it's like, no guys, like bouncing back isn't so that I look hotter than you. It's so that I'm strong and my core strength is functional, which will protect my back, which will like, it's like so much more complicated than the body image. And so people get really strung up on the body image part and are forgetting that like, we've just gone through the craziest thing that a body could ever go through. And like, it's okay if we spend time trying to recover that injury. Is like, I say injury because it's the only thing that really gets people thinking about it. I don't think it's necessarily called an injury, but no, do you know what I mean?
I really like it
because
it does
understand. Like,
it paints an
like
image.
If you broke your ankle, right? Like if you break your ankle and somebody's like, well, like, that's a little weird that you'd want your ankle to work fully again.
Yeah.
Like, why are you putting that pressure on people to like heal their ankle all the way? It's like, well, I don't know, because like, why wouldn't you want to?
Yeah.
That's literally how I think about it. And so I use the word injury because it's the easiest way to get people to understand, like, this is not about being like a low body fat percentage. Like, this is about like your body functionally needing to like do what it needs to do. And like the longevity of your life and your quality of life down the road. Like, these moms who have multiple pregnancies, who don't spend the time like recovering their abdominals and stuff, like, you're going to see, I'm sure you see it in your clients, like these 50-year-old women who come in after, you know, that phase of their life is over and they're like, oh my God, like my body's a mess. Like my shoulders hurt from hunching over and like carrying children and breastfeeding. And my low back is a mess because, you know, I never recovered my abdominal strength, and my lordosis is like I have a hyperlordosis. And it's just like about so much more than that. But again, like I have that perspective because of my background, and it's all of those things have helped me get to where I am. And none of those things are a perfect skincare routine or a perfect workout regimen. And everybody wants that answer. And I can't give you that answer because it's so much bigger than that and so much more important, actually.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, with what you were talking about there.
This is what I was saying to you about, if you start talking about this, like I will not shut the fuck up because like I am so, oh my gosh.
Well, I can see why, because there's so many people, and I'm actually someone who is really on board with having a more body neutral approach and not being so weight loss centric with everything, and almost being like kind of I would say I'm anti diet culture, but I think where people get confused, that doesn't mean I'm anti dieting all the time. Like if you as an individual want to diet, I don't care. That's actually fine.
Yeah.
What I'm against is living in a society that tells everyone that they have to achieve a certain level of thinness in order to, like, as if you have to look a certain way to be healthy or attractive. Like, I'm against conditioning that because I think it does more harm than good. But that also doesn't mean that I don't help some people with weight loss. But if I do, I just tell them I'm probably not going to, if it's the only thing you care about, I'm not your guy, because I am going to want you to pursue other things other than just myopically defining your health by weight loss. But there's a lot of people who it's like, hey, maybe a 10-pound weight loss goal makes sense for you and you don't have a history of disordered eating, so I feel safe to help you along that journey. But if you have that history of it, I don't feel safe there at all, because I know how much of a tricky position that can be, and I don't want to nudge someone back into those patterns because it's just out of my scope. But that doesn't mean I'm against it. And with returning to, I guess, your pre-body shape after pregnancy, one thing that I have noticed with clients, because I've noticed that too, where you had said after the first one they get back and then the second one they just can't recapture it, or maybe they were fit their whole lives and then they couldn't recover back. I had this weird theory, and I'm curious your perspective on it. It was after I had a couple clients who had very quick recoveries, basically after their pregnancy, kind of got back to their the way that their body looked pretty quickly and their training routines, etc. But the two things that I noticed, so this is not some sort of evidence-based idea, this is from my pure experience, was that these women actually, before they were pregnant, trained very regularly, but also hadn't restricted food in a long time. They were eating a lot of food, eating high protein diets. They weren't going through the weight yo-yo cycle. And the place where my mind went was, I was wondering, I think for a lot of women, the first, especially if they were growing up in diet culture, as we all were, they were conditioned to restrict a lot of food and eat as little as possible to achieve some level of thinness. And the first time they got pregnant was almost the first time maybe in their life they had permission to eat a lot and enjoy a lot. And I'm like, as someone who had a history of binge eating, that's a really hard thing to come back from, especially as you pointed out, because once you get out of pregnancy, that the hard part's actually beginning for the 20 years of you're now swimming against the current to lose that weight again. And if you have a history of not being able to sustain yourself on a pretty weight stable diet where you're eating a lot of food, not restricting all the time, and not just exercising to burn as much calories as possible, I can imagine chasing that while postpartum and now taking care of a kid and being sleep deprived and doing everything that basically any successful weight loss journey will have you, is sleeping a lot and exercising and having time to de-stress. Like, you're getting none of that. And I'm like, yeah, that could be
those options are just not there.
Really hard to get back to that. So I'm curious to your thoughts on that.
I think that's such a good point. It's actually really funny because I remember when I got pregnant, I thought, oh, like all I have left now is eating, and like I'm just gonna really enjoy eating. But then I had acid reflux really bad, so like eating was my enemy. So I didn't even have that. But anyways, I completely understand that sentiment as well. That's so important. So I've always had a really good relationship with food. Never ever had any issues on that front. I've never counted a calorie in my life, literally never, not once, still to this day, don't do it. I've always just kind of, again, but I had that nutrition background from going to school. So I understood like if I just focus on like I looked at I changed my mindset a long time ago. Food is fuel. It's not bad for you. It's fuel. You get to choose what the fuel is that you want and then build muscle and you're probably going to be fine. Like that's literally kind of how I always lived. It was like just prioritize like whole food, protein, make sure I got muscle mass and like everything else will work itself out. That's always kind of how I've lived. I've always had fun. I've always eaten whatever I wanted if I felt like it, but I've always had a good relationship with food. And so going into pregnancy, like those mental things I'm not struggling with that. That's not something that's my struggle. And so you're 100% right. A lot of women do go into pregnancy and they do, because I will tell you this right now. And this is how this is how I can explain this to you. Even for me, pregnancy, and I was always fit, right? Like I always felt like good in a bikini. I always felt confident. I always felt strong, whatever. But there was a different level of confidence, truly, for me, when I got pregnant, and the pressure of having a flat stomach is completely gone. Like, I can't tell you for a woman how freeing that is.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, I don't give a shit. Like, this is my cute little bum. Actually, I'm going to push it out. Like,
Yeah.
It is so freeing to go to the beach and even as someone who was very like in good shape for most of the time, I still did worry about like, do I look, because you have different parts of your cycle, your body looks different. Like if you're feeling bloated or you're about to get your period, like you're embarrassed. You don't really want to go to the beach that day. It's like, shit, all of those thoughts are gone. There is this level of like being so free. You don't have to be perfect and have a flat stomach. And therefore you can eat whatever you want. And who cares if you get a little bit bloated? You can't tell because you're pregnant or like, so I completely understand why people like finally are like, oh my God. And then they just spiral because that's what ends up happening sometimes is that then that finally, if they've been so restrictive for so long, like you said, that feeling of finally being free of that pressure can kind of, the pendulum, right? Like the pendulum's now swinging the wrong way. And then again, like you said, you get into that binge level or whatever version of that pendulum it is. And it is going to change your body composition. And, unfortunately, like we said, like if you want to maintain like as much as possible, that should be the goal throughout pregnancy, not doing anything more. But like my goal during my pregnancy was to try to keep my muscle mass as much as my muscle mass as I could.
Yeah.
And that was hard to do, but yeah, like for some, I totally get it. I totally get like that freeing feeling. And so I think you're onto something for sure.
Well,
but the other thing, Dylan, is that like, again, then you become a mom and it does become really hard to have a good nutrition, to eat at all sometimes is hard. You forget to eat, literally. Like you're so busy, you're so overwhelmed. You're like, you literally you're cooking your kids 3 meals a day and you're eating the scraps off the floor. That's literally how it is sometimes. And so like those things become so difficult. But then the other problem is, and again, I'm experiencing this on a very potent level by sharing on social media, is that we've also, again, like I said, we have normalized that like, you had a baby, so just fuck it. Like, you're good now. Like, you don't need to, that doesn't need to be your goal anymore.
Yeah.
Your goal doesn't have to be that anymore because you had a baby. And I think that's a bit dangerous. Like, I understand to a point, but I'm also like, okay, but guys, like, again, this isn't about body image. Like, let's take that off the table. This isn't about like feminism or anything. Like, this is about like purely, like I said, recovering your strength and your functionality of your body. So it's like if we're taking the body image off the table and we're focusing on those things, then there should be a bar that you should always, no matter if you've had a kid or not, that bar should be there for everyone to want to meet that bar and be, like a strong functional version of themselves that will help them as they get older, like, and help them have like good, metabolic like functions in their body, things like that. It's like, it's been so normalized now that like we're tiptoeing around this issue of like, oh, well, you can't say anything or you can't help them or, you've had a baby, so give yourself a break. It's like, okay, yes, to a point, give yourself a break, but don't ever just throw in the towel because you're a mom now and people should just accept that your body's different. And you know what I mean? Your body's going to be different no matter what. People think that like, because I fit in the same size of jeans, that my body's the same. It's not. It's never going to be the same, but I'm strong. I've regained my core functionality. I think my core might be stronger now than it ever was before, weirdly enough, because I focus so much more on it. Like those things are important. And like people have to stop obsessing over like the body image aspect and start thinking of it as like your health,
Well, I agree completely through the lens that I think the thing that we really struggle with is this all or nothing mindset, because the sentence you said there that stuck out was, hey, you had a baby, now take it easy. And I would say the same thing as a coach, but then I wouldn't leave it there. That doesn't mean, hey, you had a baby, you don't got a job. I'm like, okay, you had a baby. Yes. You now have way more on your plate. Does that mean like you worked out 4 times a week before and you did all these things and yada, yada? I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of clients that are parents. I'm like, how does 2 times a week sound? And a lot of the time people are like, what's the point? And I'm like, it's way better than 0. And you can't do 4. There is a dream fairy tale world where you're thinking that you just added on this massive thing to your plate, which is parenthood and all the responsibilities that come with it. And you think you can still prioritize the exact same amount of leisurely activities, even though if it's healthy for you. Going to the gym you need free time to do so, right? You don't get paid to go.
Yes.
And it's not actively keeping your kid alive. So that's now free time by definition. You don't have the same amount
100%.
anymore. So, okay,
and it might be the only free time you get, so take it.
Yeah. So 1 or 2 is actually way better than 4. And people really struggle with that, where they finish the sentence where you finished it. Take it easy. That doesn't mean don't do anything. It means literally take it easy.
Give yourself a break.
Yeah. It's like, what
Don't
is
be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself. That's what people say. And I'm like, okay, well, at some point we got to be a little bit harder.
100%.
Like for you, not for me, like, And then it's also like, and that's the other thing, by the way, like I don't have as much lean muscle mass as I used to previous to having the kids. I don't train as much.
Yeah.
My workouts are 45 minutes to an hour maximum. And I do minimum 3 a week, but I'm also very active as a mom. You see my kids, and so that makes up for a lot of that. But I don't train even close to what I used to train before having kids. And I don't need to. I have been able to figure out, and then the other thing is, and Dylan, you should address this, is a lot of moms say, how do you have the energy? And what I want to say to them is it gives me energy. It gives me mental clarity. It gives me like a boost to be able to actually get through the day if I'm having a shitty day. Like, can you address why that might be? And because I really want moms to get this, because I know when you're feeling really yucky and you haven't had a good sleep and stuff, I want to be like, but guys, I'm promising you, go do a session if you have the time to do it, and it will change the trajectory of your day. You will feel better.
Well, I think you actually touched on it right there earlier. You said, I don't train as hard. And I'm not saying it doesn't mean you should never train hard. But when you say I don't have the energy, and I still struggle with this myself because I have a history of being more athletic and training really hard, there are days where I train because I'm not a parent, but I do run my own business and I'm pretty much quite busy a lot of the time. I wake up very early every day. So I do have a limited time that I can really dedicate to training. And that does mean I don't have the same energy every time, but I've made more peace with the fact that some workouts, I actually don't go completely hard. And after I do those workouts, I always end up feeling better. And I've been doing this for 15 years and I still am humbled by this lesson repeatedly. But it's part of me being like, hey, I might not have the energy to go crush a workout, But do I have the energy to go do a half-ass workout? And you know what happens when you do a half-ass workout? 99% of the time, you actually end up doing more than you expected. Like I do this.
Exactly.
I have this with some of my coaching clients that are parents. So for one example, I have like a tiered workout where I'm like, hey, the tiered workout is like, it's a superset. Just go do squats and you do rows. And then if you can get to the second part, it's tier 2. Then you do the second superset. And then tier 3 is, and they're all separated on the app that I use. And one client was like, this is really helpful because when I used to look at the whole program, I was like, I have to go and do the whole thing. I'm like, no, you don't. Your minimum goal this week is to do the first tier on both. And half the time he does the second tier if it's a really good week. And he's also a new parent. So he just had a second kid. And I was like, this worked out really tremendously because he's not just seeing everything he's not doing. He's getting a win of like, okay, I'm still doing these. And what's interesting about him is I trained him when he wasn't a parent. We didn't do this. It was like, hey, here's your program, dude. And he was training in person at the time.
I love that.
And he did stuff on his own and he never missed them because he was a single guy living downtown and he had free time. And I'm like, yeah, you're not that guy anymore, man. Like, what can we do here? And
and we've got to adapt to that.
Yeah, big time. And you know what? His kids are 2 and a brand newborn. In 15 years, he won't actually have to do that probably as much anymore. Maybe he'll have more time when the kids are out of the house or whatever. Like you're watching kids grow.
Well, the dad bod for a reason.
Yeah. So no, I think it's getting out of the all or nothing mindset.
Keep these juiced up at least.
Yeah, 100%. You got to keep them there. But like when you get out of the all or nothing mindset and realize that something is better than nothing, then, because to your point, you're talking about like some moms, I assume some of them have F45 brain still. So when they think of, I don't have the energy for that, it's like, well, you don't have to have the energy for that.
No, yeah, exactly. Go get on a treadmill, even just do a slow walk and read a fucking book. Like, honestly, I always say to moms, like, if you can find a gym that has a creche or like somewhere that they can do some child minding for an hour and a half, like whatever it is. Like when I was in like the trenches of stay-at-home mom life with 2 like 8-month-old twins, sorry, maybe not 8 months old, but anyway, like when they were around a year, I think I started back at the like a big gym, and like I would bring them to the cute little creche and they would, you know, play and whatever, and I would literally go to the cafe and just drink a coffee for a half an hour by myself. Like that in itself, if I didn't have the energy some days for gym, I would literally just go drink a coffee, read a book.
I love that.
And then I would go like maybe on the treadmill for 20 minutes and just go for a walk. Some days I would just do a sauna. Like, but I got out of the house. I tried. Like some days I would start a workout and then I wouldn't be feeling it and I'd say, fuck it. And I would just go do a sauna. And like, I wasn't hard on myself about that, but it got me out of the house. And also, Dylan, it got me into a routine.
Yes.
That I was still going to the gym this many days a week, even if I didn't have the energy to actually do a good workout. And then once you get into the routine of actually just showing up, then when you start getting into a better place, the kids become a little more independent. Their sleep gets better. Your sleep gets better, like whatever it is. Then you're already going 3 days. So let's start crushing the workouts. And then it just becomes, you know, and so I just think like moms don't realize like this is what gives me energy. Like I look forward to that hour and a half that I had 3 days a week. And yes, I paid a little bit of money or whatever for the creche, but it was beyond worth it. And like, it was just that the separation from the kids. I get 1 hour a day that's just for me to work on me. And it feels good. You're pumping weights. You're listening to music that doesn't sound like fucking the Wiggles. Like it's just like
it's not
it's
Baby
like
Shark
therapy. Yeah, exactly. You're like, it's literally therapy. And so when people say to me, I don't know how you do it, I'm like, I don't know how you don't do it. Like you got to do this. It's literally therapy, and it's what helped me definitely. And I'll tell you what, right now, feeling strong and good about yourself is helpful. It's helpful for everything. It's helpful.
It's energizing.
It's very helpful.
Well, when you were talking about it there, like I loved that you would just go to a coffee, because actually a strategy that I'll do with some clients, if they're really struggling to go to the gym, and I'll say, why don't you just go do your warm up? And if you do your warm up and you're like, I cannot do this, then I fundamentally believe you do not have the energy to work out that day. Go home, take a sauna, go to the steam room, chill. But 99% of the time, you do your warm up and you're like, all right, man, I'm here. Let's go. Let's do something. And you feel a little better.
Yeah, the good hormones get pumping.
Yeah.
Like the blood starts pushing around the body, and all of a sudden, boom, it's science, baby. It works. It works.
And what you were talking about before is, what I really like is you were mentioning how it's not about only body image, getting back to recovery, right? But I think for some women in postpartum, they might be chasing, hey, I just got to lose the weight back and get back to it. When ironically, if you just start going back to your normal routine, you will probably shift towards your you'll shift, maybe not directly to it, but you will likely shift closer to your settling point had you having that baby. Maybe your body look a little bit differently, but you'll at least feel much more confident and you'll feel more energized just by doing the things you did before, like exercising to whatever capacity you can, etc. But if you're strictly, and this is what I mentioned with I coach clients for weight loss, if you're myopic about weight loss, it does change how you go about everything. So exercise becomes a vehicle for weight loss. And if you're thinking, I don't have the energy to work out, but in your brain, you think of working out as a vehicle for weight loss, you're thinking of, I don't have the energy to do burpees and crawl on the floor and kill myself in the gym. And it's like, you don't have to, actually.
Who the hell has the energy for that?
Yeah. I never have had the energy for that.
Sounds awful. I'm not trying to do that either.
Yeah. And with your model, you're saying, sometimes I run the treadmill. Sometimes I did 3 times a week, but I was lifting and focusing a lot on form. And sometimes I was just like, one of the sessions, I was like, I'm going to go to the cafe. I can't do it. That for a year would do way more for you than an all or nothing mindset of 2 weeks where you crushed all your workouts and then a month where you're like, I can't do it.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, like, and I would say, and it's not a consistent thing. Like, it wasn't like a progressive linear graph of me getting better and better. It was literally like up and down. The kids get sick, I'm struggling. Like, I might have been doing like 6 weeks in a row of really good. Oh my God, I'm feeling so great. Like, I'm back to old me. So many times I thought I was back to the old me, and then something happens, you get wiped out.
Yeah.
The old me is never going to be back. Like, at the end of the day, like my life is so much more dependent on so many other factors now. And so the kids get sick, I'm not sleeping all night again, and I'm not going to probably feel as good about going to the gym. So that'll be the time that I say, you know what, like, I'm just going to do a sauna. Like, I'm just going to get there and then take a minute and have a coffee or whatever. And then, but again, I had a few good weeks of training because I've been consistent, at least showing up. And so if we want to be more specific, if you are not obsessing over weight loss or fat loss, and your thing is to build muscle and get strong, it's going to carry you through that downfall. Like, you know what I mean? If that's your goal when you're at the gym, usually is to just build some, muscle tissue. That muscle tissue that you spent the last 6 weeks building when you were on a high is going to carry you through.
Yeah.
Like, and I have always known that. Like, I've lived it. I've lived it so many times. I've lived that roller coaster. And because I've always prioritized strength and muscle over cardio and fat loss or whatever the F45 shit is, because I've always known that and I've always, prioritize it, I know that I can give myself a break and it's not going to like completely throw me off. Like my muscle mass can carry me through, basically, like literally and figuratively.
Muscle mass really does pay dividends, right? It's not like having liquid cash. It's like having an investment that pays some dividends down the line, and it takes a little bit longer to lose and liquidate anyways. So I love hearing you talk about the importance of building muscle, because I can assume your audience, you've talked about who they are. That audience often is the hardest to convince on the value of it, because they think of it as like, you'll be a bodybuilder. It's like anyone who knows you and follows you, you're talking about just wanting to build muscle and like prioritizing it. You're not a bodybuilder. You're just in shape. Like most people who I've been trying to get jacked for 15 years. And this is the biggest I've ever, like this. I've never been able to,
you look great.
Thank you. But I've never been able to be like massive. Like in my mind, I'm like, I want to be huge. And it's like, no, I actually really can't.
Everyone I know who ever does get super jacked is like way more obsessed and dedicated to fitness than you are, and is eating 10 times the amount of food you are, like literally.
And they have a genetic predisposition to probably putting on muscle quite easily. There's that too.
And are a genetic freak.
Yeah.
So that's the thing too, is that as a mom, one thing I will say about training, and one thing that I know that you drill as well into your practice, is like, you have to be honest as well. Like you said, you have to be completely honest about how much time you have to dedicate, and you have to create a plan for yourself that you can actually show up for and do. That's more important than anything else. And so if you only have 2 or 3 hours a week when you used to have 6, you have to be super efficient about that time when you're there. Okay, as much as I also just said, go to the sauna and have a coffee, but when you are training and you are feeling good about training, I think it is why I especially postpartum, I focused a lot on compound exercise. That's basically all I would do at those 3 sessions. I would focus tons and tons and tons on compound movement and weightlifting because I knew I'm going to hit as many muscle groups as I can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I only
100%.
had 45 minutes, 3 days a week. So I'm like, I'm doing free weights. I'm doing compound exercise so I can hit top to bottom. I'm not doing an ab day when I only have 3 days. I'm hitting abs by doing squats, deads. Like, you know what I mean? I don't have time to do a fucking core exercise at the end of my workout. So I became really efficient about when I was working out. Like, I was making the most of every minute and doing the most that I could with that. So that, again, like, would prepare my body if I was having a downswing and couldn't really train and wasn't feeling it, that it would carry me through, and that I was hitting, the muscle groups enough times a week because of the compound exercise that, like, it still was like giving me that stimulation that my muscles needed. But again, it's not really fair because, again, I'm a personal trainer.
Yeah. No,
like,
for sure.
I can do all of this for myself, but explaining this to other people is quite difficult because, again, it's a very complicated, it's complicated and it's simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Always with fitness,
It's
it
like
is.
life.
Right. But that's why it's hard for me sometimes. Cause I'm like, well, you can't, like, I have a lot of things helping me, a lot of years of studying and all of these things that have helped me. And it's hard for me to just tell somebody else, well, this is the formula. It's actually, like, it's hard to really kind of put it all into one thing, but actually this conversation is so good. And, like, I really hope that I'm going to share this with them because this has helped me kind of articulate what I've always wanted to say and explain to everybody, because it's very complicated to explain this in a way that people will understand sometimes. But yeah, no, I think this conversation is so helpful.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. I think so too, because one thing that I really like that you reiterate is you toggle the line of something that I've struggled with for years of trying to understand, is like being ajudgmental and compassionate, but still working hard. Like, that's a hard one to toggle because people either, what I've noticed, and I've talked about this before, is that I noticed this a few years ago where I was like, the discipline camp tends to be actually quite toxic, of like, you just got to have discipline and hard work and yada, yada. And while that's true, the messaging about that tends to actually be counterproductive. I think it doesn't resonate with me. It actually makes me feel more ashamed of everything I'm not doing than, like, celebrating what I am. But then sometimes on the opposite side, it's like too much of a, don't worry about anything. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, not good. That's also toxic.
Yeah, like, that's also enabling, right? So finding the line where you're going about it in a judgmental, you're not, if I don't work out, I'm not saying I'm a bad person. It's more of like, okay, well, what's getting in the way? Let's actually explore without saying you're a bad person for not doing this. What's getting in the way? And then we can make actionable steps and be flexible along the way and basically adjust for where you are in your life. And you're a perfect example for this because you went from someone who had a lot more free time and loves fitness to someone who still loves fitness but just doesn't have the same free time. And you made, I mean, I don't know what your process was like, but where you're at now, it seems like you've made pretty good peace with it. And you're like, hey, this is just what it is. And I still love what I can get in. And I'm doing the best that I can. And I like to have fun with it. But am I going to be in the best shape of my life all the time? Like I was when I know, probably not. And that's okay. But I'm in still pretty good shape. And I'm able to maintain it because of a lot of the work that I put in the past.
Totally. And I think, like, the targets for me have completely changed. Like, my targets are completely different. Of what I want out of my workouts are completely different. Like, I've changed so much. I've evolved so much as a person. And like I said, I've gotten really far away from the obsession with body image. Like, that's not what drives me anymore. It's so when the targets change, then you change your workouts and figure out what, like, fulfills you at that stage in your life. Like I just think, like, for me, training is a bit of a social thing now. Like, I like to go to the gym and just see other moms and, like, chat like to adults. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like the targets just are always changing, and that's okay too. And you just kind of have to figure out what drives you and motivates you. That's the main thing. And like for me, it's that like I really just love that idea that like this is just for me. Like I love that. It's like my power. Like I get high off of that power of like knowing that like I'm doing this for me, and that like it's when you're a mom, you're so selfless. Nothing you do is for you. And so there's something so just satisfying about it. So I let that drive me a lot. And I think if moms could kind of hone in on that, that could be really, really like helpful for them. And then the other thing that I think would be so helpful for moms, and it goes all the way back to what we were talking about, like full circle, about normalizing behaviors in your house so that their baseline is the easiest way that you're going to actually see that change or see that habit in your child. And so like Harry and I are both extremely, extremely passionate that our kids will know that exercise is baseline. We move our bodies, we exercise, baseline. They will never know anything else. And that's like very important to us. And so in a way, me training is actually, again, a selfless act as a parent, because I am doing this to ensure that my children have these really, really good habits. And so sometimes, again, for moms, they just have to change the perspective. Like they're not taking time away from their kids. This isn't selfish. This is like, do you want your children to feel that they deserve to be like active and healthy? Do you want your kids to feel that they deserve that? Well, you have to show them that you deserve it too. And that like, again, normalizing behaviors by habit, so that like when my kids become of an age to start making their own decisions, that's all they will ever know, is that baseline mommy and daddy work out, 3 to 4 to 5 days a week, depending on what's going on. But every day we're moving our bodies, and like that's baseline.
Yeah.
And so if moms want that for their children, then they've got to like implement it, and they've got to. I love taking my kids to the gym. I love them seeing me work out. Like I think it's so, even just at such a young age, it's so important. And if we can change the perspective for moms to say like, me taking care of myself is the best way that I can ensure my kids will take care of themselves one day. Because our whole entire purpose is taking care of them and setting them up for success, right? And so like, if you can just shift the mindset, I think that could be a huge reason why women start showing up, like, right? Because we really struggle with feeling like we deserve that time to ourselves. Well, that's a huge issue.
With this frame, you're basically having your cake and eating it too. Because you're selfishly saying like, I want to do this for me. But the same thing you're doing is actually selflessly basically instilling a value into your family home that will basically pay dividends for your kids' whole lives, where they'll see exercise as just something that you do as an act of self-care. And it's not
like brushing your teeth.
Yes, exactly.
Normal.
Yeah.
Right? It's literally like brushing your friggin' teeth. Like body and movement should be like in whatever form, like should be like brushing your teeth. It should be normalized. It should be every day, and in some form or not. Right. And I think we can all agree on that much. And like baseline, just like we show our kids that we brush our teeth every day and that we put our fucking plate in the dishwasher, or like whatever it is that you want your kids to go out in the world and do when you're not there. Like you got to show them. You know what I mean? You got to show them that this is the baseline. This is how we, and then we go from there, right?
To build on that, I think something that you're doing that would actually help a ton on top of it is going through that with the flexible yet determined way that you go about it. So because most people, myself included, got into fitness for a unhealthy reason. I got into fitness because I was an overweight kid. I actually probably would have been categorized as obese. I was very overweight, but I hated myself so much, and I thought that if I lost all the weight, I would love myself. I lost 60 pounds when I was grade 8, and I was crash dieting.
Crazy.
And the thing is, I received so much praise for it that
Grade 8
oh,
crash dieting is crazy.
I lost 60 pounds. And
But a grade 8 being obese is also crazy. Like,
yeah,
we're allowed to say that too.
yeah,
Like,
it wasn't
right?
good that I
So,
was in that state, but how I went about
yeah,
getting out of it was so unhealthy. But everyone only was celebrating my weight loss. So then I learned the message. I'm like,
praising you.
if I keep this weight off, therefore I have value. But I didn't have a
Yeah.
on or off switch. I didn't have this. I had a completely black and white way of thinking about it. Now, if I had been around people who are like, hey man, like some of us work out because we want to lose weight. Some of us just work out because we like it. Like we have this community that we do about it, and we like big up each other. And we also have flexibility. Like I couldn't eat anything that I quote determined bad, because once I would, that's when I would start binging because I put it off limits. But if I was around people who had healthy relationships with the gym, their body, and food, where, you know, we exercise because it's good for us, but, you know, we still had pizza on Fridays, and it would have actually helped me not be stuck in such a disordered eating pattern for so long, because I would have been introduced to flexibility while still being taught healthy baseline habits, right? And if there's a day that I can't work out, before when I was a kid, I was like, well, it's because I'm pathetic. Like I'm weak-willed. Like I don't have enough discipline. And now I'm like, hey, maybe I can go, but I'm going to do not as much. And that's totally okay. Like I'm not a professional athlete who
And
needs
you have to think, and you have to think like you're on that journey that I think is a very common one that happens. And especially if children end up in an obese range, like that really is a tough way to start life. It's really tough. You're really starting behind the 8 ball again with like difficult relationships with food and exercise. But you have gone through this journey as someone who has like made it your mission to understand this stuff, whereas most people don't put that effort in. And then these relationships with food and stuff like will carry on and on and on, whereas you've made a huge effort to understand it. And like I think that's like so important. And that's what I'm saying about you as a coach. You have like that different like puzzle piece that most coaches I don't think have, because you've literally walked that path of understanding like binge eating, like restrictive dieting, all these things. They're real obstacles for people. Like I understand that too. And I don't want to like come off like everyone needs to just like stop. You know what I mean? I understand.
I don't think you come off that way.
Those are very serious obstacles.
No, you don't come off that way.
Because I don't want to.
You've also never said like, because you said, hey, I had a pretty, the thing I actually really appreciate about it is because you say like, I actually had it pretty good. And like, I can only give you the best advice that I can. Right? Like you're not saying, because what the problem I have with some people who are in their position is they'll always have had a pretty lean body. They'll always had a pretty easy relationship with food, and then they'll judge others. And I'm like, but dude, you actually don't know what it's like to struggle. You're judgmental, like with the way you go about it is like something I really appreciate, because this is going to be a weird analogy, but I've met people who came from money who were like, judgmental, like everyone's just got to work hard, and like if you pull yourself up, and I'm like, dude, you came from money, shut the fuck up. But then I've met people who came from money, they're like, I have no idea what it's like to not have it. That must be tough. I'm not going to give my 2 cents because I don't know what it's like. And I'm like, I respect that so fucking much when someone is like, I actually don't know what it's like to struggle with an eating disorder. Like, what's that like? You ask questions, and that's kind of what you do. And I always appreciate that about you.
Thank you. I've always I've always taken it from, and by the way, I always get this thing, and like, I love you, mom, and I love you, my sister, and like, I love you, the women in my life. Before I go down this road, I have nothing but respect. And again, this isn't about body image for me, so I hope I can preface this, but I get often slammed for, it's just your genetics. I get that all the fucking time. And I'm so like, I'm not going to be like, well, here's a picture of my mom, and like, here's a bit like, I'm not going to be like,
see how out of shape my mom is? That'd be so horrible to do. But the thing
is that it's actually not genetic. Like if anything, genetically speaking, I think I'm more lean towards having like not a petite figure. And like, I'm actually much more petite than a lot of the women in my family. And nothing like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to like say that to people, but actually genetically, I'm actually like probably on the, I don't even like, how do I say it? I hate even saying it, but I want to say to people, it's okay. Even if it was my genetics, are you discounting that I like train all the time? Are you discounting that? It's literally a counterproductive thing to say to people. And I get really angry about the genetic conversation because habits are way more powerful than genetics.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people, again, won't be predisposed to certain things, but habits will always win over genetics. And I believe that. And I want to tell people the minute that you say it's all about genetics is the minute that you just gave up.
Yeah.
Because now you've decided you have no power. You have no choice. And that is so far from the truth. Like so far from the truth. There's a small percentage of people who potentially have a genetic disability or like something, maybe that's, I don't know everything about medicine, of course, but I'm telling all moms out there that like, unless you have some kind of crazy genetic thing happening that you're like an outlier, it is so in your power. Do not tell yourself it's just genetics, because that's what people tell themselves to feel better about their inaction.
So,
and like,
my take
it's
on
an
that
excuse. I hate to say it. It's
yes.
an excuse.
So I actually have it.
And we've got to stop telling moms that. Stop telling moms that. That pisses me off a lot, guys. I really hate that. Because moms need to know that they have power. I'm so sick of people saying that.
Well, so
like,
my
you
take
do
on
have
that
power.
is like the genetics obviously like they do play a big role in like how, for example, LeBron James genetically, even if he didn't train, he was still going to be a top 10 basketball player in the world. Doesn't matter how hard I train, I will never be better than him. And that's just a fact, right?
But his best him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can be your best you.
If I compare myself to him, then I've literally set myself up to give up on everything. And with body composition, genetics play a large role in like what you can expect your range to be in. So I'm someone who I gain muscle decently well. So you know what? I do have a genetic inclination to build muscle well. But there are people who, if I went on steroids, I could never even touch them completely natural. And that's true. So I'll run myself into the ground going crazy and develop pure despair if I compare myself to them, if my goal is to build muscle. But if I compare myself to me, right, then I actually can make real changes. And I've read some twin research on weight loss that's really interesting. And this is one for body composition that I think is very relevant. This study was actually out of Montreal in like the 90s, but it was I think it was all twins, and they housed them for 100 days. And they fed all of the twins 1,000 calories. They were adults, 1,000 calories over their baseline of maintenance. And they tracked all their food and they fed them and they lived there the whole time. Now, there was one person who gained 30 pounds over the 100 days. And there was one person who gained 8. Now, that's genetic on how likely you are to put on fat, right? Between the two.
Right.
The interesting thing was twins generally gained the same. So they're like, okay, so the twins, it wasn't exactly the same, but they were the closest in proximity, and that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Now you can look at that and you can say, see, the way I look is completely determined. And it's like, no. How you will respond to that environment will vary depending on your genetics, but you can, if you can, put yourself not in an environment where you're eating 1,000 calories over per day, right? But you also, it might be true that you're someone who is more prone to weight gain, but that doesn't mean that you can't be healthy. Like those two things are not the same at all. You might have to put more effort into managing healthier metabolic positions than someone else, and that's unfair. But that doesn't mean you're destined for it. And there also is something.
Doesn't mean that you need totally.
There's also something 100%. To be said about just because I have a genetic disposition to be successful at something else, there's also something that I'm probably not that good at. And I had this conversation with a client one time who was quite overweight, and he really struggled with his weight, and it was something he always struggled with. But what was interesting about this man was this man could walk into any room and light the room up, and everyone knew him, and he could talk to anyone and win them over with his charisma like this. And I remember we were talking, he's like, it's just kind of unfair. I do have this predisposition to gaining more weight. And I'm like, that's true. But you know what? There's also a lot of people who are like, they have a genetic predisposition to being more socially awkward and would fucking kill to have your Riz for 5 seconds. And does that mean that person shouldn't try to work on like being able to be less socially awkward or have develop some social skills? No. And does that mean you shouldn't try to be healthier? No. Like You might not be
Yes.
you probably can't be the leanest guy in the room, but I don't know if that's a good goal for you. Can you be someone who works out 3 times a week and eats a healthy diet? Hell yeah, you can. Will that make you healthier in the long run?
Yes, and be
Hell
your version.
yeah.
Yeah. And that message is so hard to get across. Again, short form content, it's really hard to get messages across. But I constantly want to say to people, I'm not saying that you should try to look like me. This is genetics. Like, my body presents this way with this diet and training because this is the way that my body presents. But like, people forget that. I'm not saying you should be like me. I'm saying you should work towards the stronger, healthier you, whatever that looks like. Like, do you think like I'm not ever going to look like Gigi Hadid? Like, if that was my goal, like, again, exactly like you're saying, the LeBron James thing, it's like, yes, like, of course that's genetics. Like, I'm never going to look like that. I'm a foot shorter than her. And I am, look like a 14-year-old boy, before I got my boobs done. Like, of course I'm never going to look like her, but it's just like, and people get lost in that sauce of like, I'm not saying that, like, genetically speaking, yes, genetics are super involved in how I look, but the overarching like point here is that you can be a healthier, stronger you.
Yeah.
And like, no genetics are going to hold you back from that. Like, well, except maybe there's a few outliers because, people will nitpick the one condition that stops you. You know what I mean? So we got to be careful. But like, there's no reason why you should just give all of the power to, oh, well, genetically, I'm just obese. It's like, okay, but we can work on it though. And as soon as you say it's just genetics, you've already thrown in the towel. It's over. Yeah. Like, truly, like you have to have some control of your life, like, in that sense. And you have a lot of control. Like, it's just figuring out like what it's going to take. And if it's hiring a personal trainer because motivation is what you lack, then hire the trainer. Like, I've always said this to people. It's like, most of us, the biggest hurdle is just showing up. Yeah. And like, typically people hire personal trainers because they don't know how to work out, but then they keep them because it's what makes them show up. And like, 100%. I always promote that being like a really good thing. So I will say, like, the F45s of the world, one thing that they are really good at is they do provide that show up.
It's community.
Like, thing that people struggle with. Yeah. And I do give them a lot of credit for that. Yeah. And that's huge. And that's sometimes the biggest, the thing that will really get people to actually change will just be purely the money investment that they've made in something, and the appointment is in the calendar. And that is what all it will take. Right. Yeah. So yeah, but I do think like we want to definitely leave the people with the message that I think the overall, like, and I'll let you obviously like say what you think, but I think the thing I want my audience to hear from me, and again, like, don't just like assume the worst, like, please, like, just, it's coming honestly from a place of wanting to empower women and new moms. It's not coming from a place of judgment at all. I want to be inspirational, and I want to be like exciting women about the idea of like having all of the right reasons to prioritize their health. And it really is truly a selfless act at the same time as it is a selfish one. And that's exactly what we should be focusing on. After having kids, having those few hours a week is so important for your mental health as well as your physical health, to be able to step away from the role of mom and go be a beast in the gym and put on whatever music like that you used to like. I love that. Like, I love that. It's just, it's therapy. And so I hope that this like conversation does inspire new moms to like really just do it. Like, just show up. Just show up. That's mainly the biggest thing.
I couldn't agree more. It's the messaging is, you don't have to have a black and white mindset. You got to be flexible about what you can fit in, and then what you can fit in, you crush it, and you try to build some muscle, and you build a habit, and you set an example. Like, those are all incredible messages, and I think it ties the full circle very well, because the one thing you said was that I loved at the beginning was, if you show up and you build that foundation, the details and the optimization strategies, they don't really matter. Like, they'll play a role, but it's majoring in the minors. if someone is doing the 5 things I just mentioned, like they're really crushing it while being a parent at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And guess what? Like, again, those targets change. Parenthood changes. Like, you're in the trenches those first 5 years. It's really tough, and you're very time poor, and you might continue to be that way forever, but you might not be. And so if you can just get get that foundation in there and just at least commit to that foundation. And then the weeks you have more capacity, go for it. And the years you have more capacity, go for it. And like, it will continue to change. But the overarching, like point here is that you should be and are allowed to prioritize your health, like as a mom.
Absolutely.
And if you can get your partner on board to support you in that, that's a huge thing too. And support each other in that. Like, when the other person has to go to the gym, don't be upset with them for that. Like, try to tell, like, at the beginning of the week, like, plan it out, like who's going to go to the gym which day, and really just be a team on it. That helps a lot too. You need to have, like, again, when you're parenting, you do, because when you're not there, sometimes the other parent has to step in. Like, if you can be on the same page and support each other's like journey to like get stronger and healthier, and like that's going to be a huge like differentiator as well. So
like like working together on that, I've had that with clients, makes it so much better. That support really pays dividends down the line, and it honestly makes, I assume, your relationship better too, because you're working together. I mean, it's a parasocial relationship that I've viewed from you and Harry, but you guys seem to really exemplify that. And I did actually meet him in Toronto when he used to come to Equinox too. So I knew you guys before you guys were the Buntons as well. And he was always at the gym, like regular as hell. So were you. Yeah. And you guys have only ever shown that on, I mean, he's jacked as hell too, so I'm not surprised. It paid off.
Our first date was at the gym.
Yeah, I believe that.
And we'll die at the gym together. No. And even to this day, we love, like, that's one of the things we used to work out together a lot, and it was quite fun. And it was like very, but those are the pre-kids days. Now we divide and conquer. But when we get like a morning off together, like we have an au pair now. So sometimes she'll take the boys on like a Saturday morning, and we go to the gym and we go to the spa after. Like, that's like what we like to do. And it feels so good to like do something healthy that gets the hormones pumping, and like you're feeling good about yourself. And then it's like you get excited about like life and the future when you're doing something that actually like makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And then you don't have the hangover of like dealing with your kids tomorrow morning after you went out to dinner and drank way too much and ate a bunch of junky food. And now you feel like crap, and you've got a parent hungover, and then you're like, why did I even go on a date night anyway? I feel even worse, and I want to rip his fucking head off. And like, I'm telling you, it's like,
yeah, no, I
like
that.
Doing workout dates together, getting healthy together, like prioritizing it together is so good for like family unit. It's so good for like showing the kids good habits. It's just all around. Yeah, it's life-changing in so many ways, and it has nothing to do with body image. Like,
people really came at you for the body image stuff.
Oh God, people come at me a lot about it. Like, it's like they think I'm just like trying to make women feel bad about themselves after having kids, and I'm like, guys, my whole page is about like women and supporting women and like being non-judgmental and like all these things. But then you think I'm just going to come out and be like, like shaming moms for being overweight after having a kid. I would never do that. Like, literally ever do that. But
Kate, if it makes you feel any better,
I hope this conversation will help.
Okay, if it makes you feel any better, like, people would probably call me like woke. Like, I am as progressive as it gets when it comes to like body image stuff. And I have a trained ear for when I think someone's coming with bad faith. I've never picked up anything from you that's like a red flag on that regard. It's always been like, hey, this is just what I'm doing. And it has been understanding that not everyone is going to be able to do that. And here's what I do, and here's what you can do. So like, I've never picked that up. And like, what my last article I wrote for Precision Nutrition was about body neutrality specifically. I was doing interviews on it. Like, I've done the rabbit hole on it. I love that. I'm very progressive on it. You've never raised a red flag for me on that. So there's just a lot of bad faith people who will go at anyone for like not saying everything perfect. And that exists on any side of whatever political ideology it comes from. People on the internet are just dicks. Like, Even people that I
know.
agree with, I'm like, dude, you're a dick.
do
Like,
it.
why you got to be like that? I agree with everything you're saying, and you're such an asshole about it all.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Well, this was fantastic. I mean, I didn't think this was going to go on for 2 hours, but knowing you and I'm not surprised that we just yapped for a
I
while.
told you. I literally said to him at the beginning, guys, I literally said, if you get me talking, I will not shut up. Like, for real.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
And also, this is actually my passion. Like, people don't realize that because, again, the topic is too sensitive and I don't need the friggin' drama.
Yeah.
But this is the one thing, like, I'm really passionate about this topic. And obviously I have a personal interest in it and a history. And so, like, I knew talking with you that it was going to, like, get me, like, you know, going. And, like, but I also think it's so important to talk about it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I love that you're, like, a trainer. You've worked with women so much, guys. Like, he's worked with so many, like, badass women. And one thing I always noticed about his training style over other trainers was you were very much, when you were talking about goals, it was, you would start training in a woman. And I remember this, you were, like, really, like, pushing her, like, you know what? Like, that's great. You want to lose, like, 10 pounds or whatever, but, like, let's throw in, like, a pull-up. Like,
Yeah.
let's throw in, like, a free pull-up. Like, let's throw that goal in there. Because at the end of the day, like, you made training fun for people and something they could fall in love with that also, again, takes them away from the body image and gives them body neutrality and gives them that, like, perspective, like, oh, like, my body's not just for looking at. Like, I can do cool shit with it. And typically, if you do, like, your goal is something like, hey, let's do free pull-ups. 3 free pull-ups can be your goal. I bet you're going to lose some body fat trying to learn to do that, right? But we don't need to call it losing body fat. That's the beauty of it. And you were always really good at that. Like, I remember that.
No, I really appreciate that, Kate.
So,
well, thank you so much.
So do you do online training? Can you give yourself a plug?
I mean, yeah.
Do you do online training?
Well, I guess it'll be a lot of people from your audience that'll be listening to this too. Yeah, so I do online coaching, so that I do some virtual training as well, but I do more online coaching where it would be like kind of coaching conversations like this that we would also start with, but you get a program that would be customized with whatever equipment you have at your disposal, weekly check-ins, and then if you actually need it, one thing I also want to put on top of it is like feedback. So if you upload videos into the app that we use, every week I sit down and I send all my clients like video feedback of like, okay, I noticed you did this. Here's what I want you to do for next week.
Wow.
Then there's weekly check-ins, and also there's nutrition as well. So when you initially sign up, there's a nutrition assessment. And I just want to tailor that to whatever your goals are specifically. But what I would say is like the tagline of my business is evidence-based fitness with empathy-based coaching. So it's really a collaborative process that I think is really important because I don't want to just have someone do a transformation. I really like to feel like, and this is a really bad business model, but I like to feel like once my clients leave, I'm like, oh, they'll be able to handle like their fitness journeys on their own. That way,
I love that. Yeah. I think that's great.
Yeah. So, I mean,
that's amazing.
Anyone that you send here to like take a listen, I really appreciate that. Because I know you have a pretty big audience. So I do appreciate you just coming on and giving me your time because I know you're quite busy with everything else you're doing right now. But I enjoyed it, honestly. Where can my audience find you? Because they might not actually know you from your work.
All over the damn world. Okay, so on Instagram, I am a content creator across Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. All different handles just to make it for all the different phases of my life.
Kay Hillier on Instagram.
I'm still Katie Hillier on Instagram because I can't change it because it's like the verified or whatever.
Oh shit.
And then and then on TikTok, I'm When Katie Met Harry.
Great name.
Because it's like kind of mine and Harry's TikTok together. And then on YouTube, I'm Raising the Bunton Twins. So I share stuff all across those. And yeah, you can find me. And I got lots of links in my bio to like connect you to all of them. So you don't have to search for them separately. Yeah. But I kind of post similar stuff on all the pages.
I'll put it all in the show notes anyways. But I did actually, in prep for this podcast, watch some of your YouTube videos. And I think you're actually going to be really good at the YouTube stuff because short form content.
I'm going to lean in.
And I saw this from like in the podcast, like we just yapped for 2 hours. Like I think you'll be really good with the long form stuff because you have more nuanced takes that you would like to get across, and you just can't get that done.
100%.
As someone who creates some short form content, the podcast is by far my favorite because you really get to like get your thoughts out there and have someone else talk about them and collaborate and let it out. And you're like, oh, dude, actually, that was what I was thinking the whole time. But when you condense it in that 6-second reel, you never really get that feeling.
No, you're just getting a sound bite out there. And that's good too. Like, it's good to do that too. Cause I often think of like the short form is to like hook, it's the bait.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then the long form is where we get into like the mix of what we actually mean by it. It's just getting people to actually watch the podcast, or, because I'm sure we'll do some clips of this too, and it'll be some bait out there, but it's nice to just have that long form version that people can dive into. And I do think this is, again, super helpful. And I would hope any mom who follows me, here's your soundbite. I'm going to give it to you. I really hope that all the moms who follow me who have, are wanting to put their health first again, are wanting to recover their bodies and feel strong again. Like, I genuinely think this podcast is going to be super helpful to listen to, and like getting the coach point of view, getting the mom point of view. Like, I really do think this is like really dived into some good topics and has been really insightful for those people for sure.
Okay. I appreciate that. That's a clip. Clip that.
Clip.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
I got to go work out, guys.
Yeah, you got to go work out. Go have a coffee. Go do 20 minutes on the treadmill, have a coffee. Okay. Well, thanks again. I'm going to put everything in the show notes, and you and I will talk soon, Kate. But thank you again for coming on.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Once again, thank you for listening to the 5 Elements podcast. If you enjoyed that, please make sure to share this with a friend or leave a review, as that helps me tremendously. And if you are looking for online coaching and support with your fitness goals, check out what I offer in the link of this show, or in the show notes. There's a link in the show notes. Those 2 words make sense here somewhere, but just head to the show notes and you'll see a link for online coaching where you can apply for that. And I will see you next time.